Hello, welcome from
Welcome.
Tape to Twitch with Mellotron Marcus. Today we're talking about hits of the decade, and yeah, I'm Cassie.
I'm Danielle. Let's bring in Marcus. What up, Marcus?
Marcus.
Hi there. Hi there. We're hanging old in dark old Stockholm.
Tell us about it.
Uh,
Is the weather
yeah.
great?
No, it's gray.
Oh.
It's been dark. It's 8 o'clock in the evening, and it's been dark for 4.5 hours
Oh.
already. Yeah. So
Ouch.
and it's kind of gloomy. That's how the sort of the day is. But some days there's a little bit of sun, and that's nice. But it's now it's just a little bit over freezing point of water, so it's like mid 30s Fahrenheit. So
no.
That sucks.
Yeah. So it gets to be like maybe 34 in the day, and then in the night it's like 32, 3, or maybe below 0 Celsius centigrade, and so it's like 30 maybe Fahrenheit, and that's about as much action as it gets.
So it's 73 in Burbank here, and it's sunny.
Oh,
And we're wearing jackets
nice.
because we're actually a little cold.
A light jacket,
Yes.
a light Mellotron jacket.
exactly,
A
precisely.
denim shirt,
Yeah.
to be precise, but
Yeah, that's the way to go. Well, at least it's warm side here in Sweden for most of the time. So, but it's not the period to be in Sweden for this this time of year for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's so strange here in California, the holidays. We just had Thanksgiving. It doesn't feel like Thanksgiving when it's approaching because it's just still the same old sunny weather.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the non-season of LA weather. It's just sunny. But I heard there was going to be a heat wave again pretty soon. I was surprised.
Really?
Or is that just bogus? I don't know.
It might already
I
be
didn't think-
happening because last week it was colder than it is right now, and I think there's like a high of 79 today.
No.
Yeah, I think this is the heat wave, just that it's like a good 5-10 degrees cold or hotter right now than it will be in a few days,
Yeah.
where the high will be 70 again. So
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
The lows
that's
are
a
all
nice heat
like
wave.
right below 50. Like it's getting chilly at night when the
Yeah.
sun goes down.
Yeah.
I went for a bike ride
Yeah.
yesterday, and it's like you're riding, it's like the sun, you're like yes, and then you're in the shade, and it's like oh my god,
no.
my fingers, I'm so cold, and then you get in the sun, you're like yes. So
All right.
it's just that kind of a weather right now in LA, but
yeah,
it is starting to feel a little bit more festive. People are putting lights out, so you can kind of imagine that you're in a Christmas wonderland.
yeah.
Marcus, have you gotten a tree or anything holiday-ish?
No tree yet. But we had the first. We call it the first of Advent, which is the first Sunday in or like. Wait a minute. How I don't know how the counting is, but now it ended up being in November, which is kind of rare. But it's so it's like there's four Advent Sundays before Christmas, and sometimes it ends up on Christmas, but it has to be before, so you count from Christmas and then a Sunday and then boom 3 more, so to say. So it was the first of Advent, so we were at my mom's place, and we were it was starting to feel Christmassy. You have these 4 chandeliers with 4 candles, and you light one each Sunday, so to say.
I know that this probably has nothing to do with it, but like an advent calendar where like you get a chocolate every night before leading up to Christmas. Do you guys practice that as well with the candles?
Totally.
Hell yeah.
And that's funny. I didn't know that you called it that, because we call it also adventskalender. It's the same word, actually. I didn't know that it was the same word in English.
Yeah.
Huh?
As Americans, we just steal traditions. If they're food related, we're very excited about that.
Yeah.
So makes sense.
No, that's totally what we have too. Like a little candy for every day leading up to Christmas.
Nice.
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, we got some music to listen to today, and these are hits of the decades.
Yes, we have some heavy hitters, songs you have definitely heard if you have been around these last 10 years, if you are under 10 years old, I don't know. I don't know how to ensure that you've heard these, but I assume everyone listening is over 10 and has heard these.
Well, let's start out with what I feel like is the biggest hit of all of these. Chandelier by Sia.
Oh yeah.
It's
great start.
It's so good. Here we go.
Party girls, don't get hurt, can't feel anything. When will I learn? I push it down, push it down. I'm the one for a good time call, phone's blowing up. Ring on my doorbell, I feel the love, feel the love. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, drink. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, drink. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, drink. Turn back till I lose God.
Yeah, that's. I just gotta say, first of all, what an amazing vocal, and it's also amazingly weird if you listen, especially to the beginning. Yeah. You don't understand at all what she's doing. It's a very, very peculiar vocal, to say the least. And then of course she really belts it out towards the chorus and everything. And but listening to the beginning, it just sounds like it's like a weird dance hall track or something. She has of course she does a great job to it. And this is a very intricate string arrangement, I'm sure, but you can hear that's Mellotron all over it. I know Kirsten as a professional acquaintance, and I've been to the studio a couple of times. So I worked on his 400, the smaller analog Mellotron that he's been using for many years. And then he also has a digital Mellotron. So this sounds like a mixture of several different string parts and string sounds, both like a solo violin and solo cello fairly high up, and then the 3 violins, of course. It's like a massive string arrangement with based on Mellotron. As far as I can hear, it's only Mellotron. So it's and it was a phenomenal hit. And this is one of those key tracks where we actually did notice in our sales and how many people were asking. It was a bit of a divide, from before and after this track, because it was so ubiquitous all over every media, basically.
Yeah, it was a huge hit. What I found interesting listening back, because when I first listened to the song, I didn't hear the Mellotron. I didn't have the keen ear for Mellotron that I have perfectly been molded by thanks to you, Marcus. But when I listen to it now, it sounds sort of like, she has that chorus, and then she kind of has that post chorus where it's still amping up. Mm-hmm. The actual hook, the chorus, sounds like a digital Mellotron, but then the second half, after a minute, you really start to hear that tape hiss. It might even be that 400 in a combination of everything that you just said too.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely it's a combination of several things, and I should ask him at some point.
Yeah.
I spoke to him last about a year ago when he had acquired some weird old Chamberlain, and we were talking about how to fix that and how to steer. I don't actually remember how, because I'm not pushing those kinds of projects, but I would of course help him out to get it fixed. I think it was a remote partially, which is one where the keys are. It doesn't have any keys. It's just little pieces of wood that are pushed down by solenoids, and these were designed to be hooked up to Hammond organs, so people could like play the Hammond organ and then flick a switch and then just play flutes and strings and stuff. We've touched on this subject before. One of the most well-known guys was named Ron Rose, and it was in Lake Tahoe. He had Ron Rose's magic organ, and that was part of the show, that he would be like playing, this was in the 60s, so he would be playing like 60s, like organ, there were these organ soloists that basically had an act with a Hammond organ, and you could do so much with it. And then he had that extra thing that he could just flip a switch, and the Chamberlain was of course hidden, and it was like there was just a thick multi-cable going to that Chamberlain, and then he would just play strings and flutes and stuff. And it must have been, for anybody that knew anything about keyboards, they must have been like, what the hell? What is going on here? Because no can sound like strings and flutes and stuff. So, I wish one would have a recording of that stuff. He was using it as like and this was the old style Chamberlain remotes that had the old style Music Master mechanism with the springs and all that. And those were much less reliable than the later M1 series remotes that had a bit of popularity, so to say, but still they're extremely rare. Of course, there's only maybe 20 around or something around there. So both 35 key versions and the 25 key of the M1 remotes, so to say. So he had acquired one of those, Greg. So I guess at one or some other point I will have to dig into that, so to say.
And how would you mic
I have
that?
to talk to him about it. Yes.
How would you mic that? Is there an output on the M1 or the M400?
No. There's the older remotes, the Music Master style remotes from that era. They had a little speaker in it, but the M series, no speaker. I mean, he realized by then that this was just a pro musician thing, and there's nothing no grandma is ever going to put in her living room, because it's just and which he thought that the earlier ones would be that everybody would have like a Music Master in their home, but that they're just way too finicky and complicated for any like, so shall I say, a home user basically. And when he came out with the M series in around about 69, 70, he had realized that the pro musicians are my main user group, and the only ones that where it makes any sense to deal with. But I in the beginning, I'm sure he thought of him to be the new Lawrence Hammond, to be selling the Music Masters to like every music store in the country, more or less. But it was not meant to be for various reasons.
A different legacy he left.
Huh?
It was a different legacy that he left.
He definitely. So it's, and one should not forget also the video, which is absolutely amazing too for this song, with this little ballet dancer girl that absolutely has. It's such a performance.
Yeah.
It was. I remember seeing it for the first time. It took a couple of listens because the video was just so riveting. The way she was dancing and the way she was acting towards the camera, and the song, of course, it was just.
It's shocking.
And then after a while,
it's shocking. It's like you have to watch it a few times before you can even think about the song and not just be thinking about it as like a visual like performance, it's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah. It's
that
very
little
great.
dancer's
And
like
there
the
was
spokesperson for Sia now.
Huh?
Yeah.
I mean, that little girl who's probably not so little anymore. She's basically like the spokesperson or like the face of Sia.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
she's does
Interesting.
several videos. And
Oh yeah, she's been in all the videos. Sia is also producing a movie, but don't be too excited. There's a lot of controversy about it, but this girl is starring in it too.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's all I'll
Interesting.
say about that. You might want to look that up later, but
Ooh, I'll have to do my homework.
yeah,
That
there's
sounds cool.
there's some interesting stuff going on right
I
now.
wanna
with
know the
Sia.
beef.
Oh wow, interesting. Yeah, she did this. I remember it was, I don't know if it was Ellen DeGeneres or something, and she had like a head in a bed or something. How was that visually done? It was just bizarre. You couldn't see her face, of course, or she was standing in a, I don't remember. It was just, of course, you couldn't see her, and then the little girl was doing the whole dance routine on stage, sort of, and it was like a bed where she had her head stuck in, and you couldn't see. I was just
Wow.
mind-bending, but great song and great visuals to go with the whole thing. So
It's phenomenal.
yay Sia, and yay Greg, and yay whatever the little girl's name is. I don't know her name,
Maddie
unfortunately.
something. Her name is Maddie something, and I can't remember
okay.
her last name. But
Maddie
yeah,
something. Maddie
Yeah.
and Sia.
Yeah, amazing performance. She did for the visuals. She was like half
yeah,
of the whole thing.
she's a
so,
fantastic dancer.
yeah.
Well, not a great dancer, but a great musician. Ed Sheeran is next
Yeah.
on our list. I don't know if he's a
Yeah.
great dancer. He actually did have that one song where he does like a ballet route, not ballet.
I don't remember
get dance, like a ballroom thing.
Oh, like a.
Yeah, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm
I haven't seen.
I'm
this.
not keeping up too closely, but this was a pretty popular song. You really couldn't avoid it.
I am not a huge Ed Sheeran fan, but this song was stuck in my head for pretty much all of 2017, and I just like had to give it to him. I was like, this is incredibly catchy. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's hip. I am a sucker for anything with like a kind of melody sound to it. I love it. So this song I really enjoyed. This was like guilty pleasure pop song that I loved this decade.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering too,
Yeah,
should
it
we
was-
watch the video first so that our listeners can maybe know what they're listening for?
I think because this Mellotron part, you have to kind of know where to look, and then it's very obvious.
So let me share my screen with you, Marcus. Hang on, listeners. So yeah, this is what the New York Times posted this.
Yeah.
Let's just check it out. Let's get in this.
Layered up some more vocals, some of these guitars. One of the things that we added was the Mellotron. It just added a little colour to it for me. Just a little bass drum, just to give it some weight. We got a little 16 clap going. Then we added a little rim. It's kind of the only thing that's sort of slightly off the beat, you know. So it feels like it's moving on all the time. You're not getting bored. Every time you start getting bored of it, something new comes in or something drops out.
It kind of builds and builds and builds and then drops and builds and builds and builds and then drops, and then at the end it has a moment which I quite like.
Come on, be my baby, come on. Come on, be my baby, come on. I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body.
Beautiful. Beautiful song.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Yeah,
let's
it's
like
a catchy
dive.
track for sure.
Should we dive into the track, or was that enough?
Up to you.
Marcus?
I don't know. I think it might have been enough actually.
Yeah.
Because it's so I think they pushed it a little bit in this mix. So I think the pizzicatos are kind of a little bit more buried even in the whole thing. And since I hardly could even hear the strings in the Sia song, believe it or not, through the internet compression situation, I don't know if this is even going to go through. I mean, Shape of You is what's the title? Shape of You,
Shape of You.
I'm in love with the Shape of You. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess anybody has been above ground this last during 2017 can't have missed it.
Yeah.
It was everywhere. And it was of course very, very nice of them. These are people that I've never met, and I don't think I have been in direct contact with them. So they've just purchased the equipment, and it was a very nice gesture of them to just give us so much free exposure, so to say, without being like trying to get something out of us, because certain people do. And it was just, and that's the best way of cooperating. I think that it just goes, spontaneously. Nobody asks for something, and it's just an exchange of mutual voluntary giving, basically. So this was of course really amazing, because they were through the whole video. It's of course a longer video where they talk about it, about the whole song and the structure. And even though it's just this little passage where he actually plays on the mellotron, and it's the controller is standing on the mellotron, so it's in the video for quite a bit of time, so to say. And of course, lovely to hear that they're using the pizzicato violins, and which is a beautiful pizzicato violin in the mellotron, but it's nothing that anybody's ever before this, I believe, used to any extent. And for me, of course, with all the work that all of these sounds have meant, both in collecting the tapes and curating them and playing them off, and in some cases resplicing them, and just a bunch of hard work. When you sit there with like a pizzicato violin, you're really questioning what the hell you're doing a little bit, because it's just like, who is ever going to be using this? And to my great, it's come to use, and I guess we will see maybe at some point some use of that fifth saxophone that we have somewhere in the library. I mean, when I was starting to going through, like I said, the fifth or sixth saxophone, or even tenor saxophone, because then we have some altos, and I think somewhere there's a bass saxophone somewhere, but the fifth or sixth tenor saxophone, I was starting to think like, also, like, is this all of no use? But since they have a slightly different character, all of them, it makes sense, and I'm hoping for that with all of these this use of the digital mellotron, that a lot of people will be also using these more exotic sounds.
Yeah, I think they will be. Shout out to Steve Mack, who is the guy we saw in that video who had the mellotron. He is one of the producers of this track and songwriter. Yeah, I think they knocked it out of the park. I think another thing I found really interesting in Shape of You specifically is how sparse the whole thing is, which kind of makes it so much more special that they put in that mellotron part. Because I was watching this video the other day, and it really, the entire song is that one little part which he did on the keyboard that he had above the mellotron. It's that there are no drums in the song. All of the drums are Ed Sheeran doing percussion on his guitar, and then like that's pretty much it. Everything else is just a few little things to kind of give it flavor, and they decided, this is carrying the entire track, but it needs something else to lift it up, and I'm very happy that they chose the mellotron.
That's exactly.
And we've got this great photo of Ed Sheeran and Eminem. When's that collab coming out?
Yeah, exactly.
I cross my fingers.
I love the mystery of this photo. I've seen it a few times now, and every time I just want to know what happened. What was going on this day? Like what came from this?
They were geeking out with a mellotron. It
Was
looks
the
like
mellotron
that
an
they were just like,
important
oh my
part?
God, listen to this, and oh my God, that other violin and stuff. It's so funny. It's so. The interesting little anecdote concerning this is that I've many years ago, before the digital mellotron, I actually was working on that John Lennon Mark II mellotron the first time around, when it had a totally different fault. and this was at Universal Records headquarters at that time, and they had just signed Eminem, I think, but he's on Interscope, I think, which is subsidiary to or connected to Universal, and at that time he had released that track with no yawning here, please.
Sorry.
and he had released that track of Dido, which has Mellotron in it. And he had released that song Sing With Me, which is Dream On by Aerosmith, which also has Mellotron in it. So at that time I was selling a few Mark 6s here and there, but it would have been a coup to sell it to Eminem. And I was sort of like, I was talking to one of the A&Rs there, and he was sort of mentioned, I wasn't having like putting any high hopes into that, but it was just one of the few moments where I was like kind of intriguing a little bit to maybe get somebody to buy
putting out a feeler,
an analog Mellotron, basically. Huh?
I said putting out a feeler. To see.
Exactly, definitely putting out the feeler for that, and so I have been always thinking that there's some sort of connection. I mean, that he knows that sound, and it's just he must have been made aware by somebody that two of his biggest hits at that time had somewhere in it had a Mellotron. In the Dido track it was a cello, and in the Aerosmith song it's the strings and the flutes that they're switching between. And then that photo came up, and it's just such a bizarre. There's like these little hints about that he might be a total Mellotron nut after all. But
might be.
In that case, it would have been even more funny because he's never through anybody or any of his producers or assistants or whatever. Never anybody from that camp has reached out. So it's and I mean, we've been Mellotron.com since '96, so it's not that we're hard to find, but it's just a funny detail concerning Eminem.
I just love the clash of styles here in this photo because it looks like Sharon is just like a child. He's got a little sweater on.
He's got a big old smile on his face.
And then Eminem looks like his crazy neighbor who's babysitting this weekend. And he's like, yo, I got a Mellotron and some weed. I'm coming over. Yeah. And he just ruins Ed Sheeran's life. Yeah. Like that's what it's hilarious. It's a really funny photo.
Yeah, it's such a funny and weird photo. I wish it would be so interesting to know the background behind it because I when every time I hear an Eminem track, especially now in later years when I know about this photo, I'm like, no Mellotron. So it's kind of like it's still a mystery. Of course, I have to say I haven't like gone through his later albums with a fine-tooth comb to find it, or not even a coarse tooth comb, I have to say. Haven't looked through them, but it's so maybe there is something in there, but no hits for sure. So
maybe one day. Well, speaking of incredible songwriters, Julia Michaels, and the track Issues. Should we just get into it?
Yeah. Before we get into it, I just want to say I don't know why, but a lot of the hits from the last decade were all released in 2017, and I cannot tell you why. I do not know why, but all of the hits, first of all, like biggest hits of the decade, but second of all, biggest hits of the decade that had Mellotron in it, all 2017. Don't know what's going on with that, but Shape of You is 2017, Issues is 2017, and the next song we'll look at after Issues is also 2017.
It's kind of weird. I wonder when that Taylor Swift track came out where she had, I think that was slightly later. But it wasn't like the biggest hit from that album. That
Which
had like
track? The Lover one.
God. I have to think about which track it was, but I think that was slightly after 2017. But of course, that was like the smallest hit of her gigantic hits on that album. It came out in 18 or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was
pretty
2018. Could have even been early 2019.
Yeah, so
it was. Looks like the album came out August of 2019, but the singles, probably earlier in 2019.
Yeah. So let's listen to that Issues track. It's we have to mention that it's both the pizzicatos again and the Chamberlain. Is it flute or cello? I just forgot. That's going on in the background. Flute
I think
or cello?
it's cello.
Yeah, I think too.
Don't quote me, but
yeah, I think it's the cello, but that's fairly distinct. But the pizzicatos you have to know basically because that's kind of not a non-mellotronish sound.
Right.
Well, here we go.
I'm jealous, I'm overzealous. When I'm down, I get real down. When I'm high, I don't come down. I get angry, baby, believe me. I can love you just like that, and I can leave you just as fast. But you don't judge me, 'cause if you did, baby, I'd judge you too. No, you don't judge me, 'cause if you did, baby, I'd judge you too. 'Cause I got issues, but you got them too. So give them all to me, and I'll give mine to you. Bask in the glory of all our problems, 'cause we got the kind of love it takes to solve them. Yeah, I got issues, and one of them is how bad I need you. You do shit on purpose. You get mad and you break things. Feel bad, try to fix things. But you're perfect, poorly wired circuit. And got hands like an ocean. Push you out, pull you back in. 'Cause you don't judge me. 'Cause if you did, baby, I'd judge you too. No, you don't judge me. 'Cause you see it from the same point of view. 'Cause I got issues, but you got them too. So give them all to me, and I'll give mine to you. Bask in the glory of all our problems, 'cause we got the kind of love it takes to solve them. Yeah, I got issues, and one of them is how bad I need you. I got issues, you got them too, and one of them is how bad I need you.
There it is.
Yeah. Now it's funny. I always was convinced that these were the Chamberlain cellos, but the way it sounded through the speakers, it sounded so way down. So I was, and the Chamberlain cellos are an octave higher than the Mellotron cello for the non-initiated listeners, and so it sounded like it was maybe they used both, but it was also this weird compression and like also I'm listening through a Mac, so and I didn't do my homework, I didn't listen to it beforehand, but it might be both, but for some reason, because of I think it's got quite a heavy vibrato, so that's why I think I was originally thinking it was a Chamberlain cello, but there might be both in this track actually. So it's definitely the digital Mellotron, and Benny Blanco being one of the producers, and he's definitely the guy that brought this in. He was really. This was quite a few years ago. He was really he was buying like a couple of them about 6 years ago, I would say. I have to look up my old emails. He personally contacted me, and at that time it was just like Benny Blanco, a guy, some producer dude in LA.
Right.
And he had some success by then, but not that humongous success he'd had later with Halsey and whatnot. So he bought a few, which of course in the beginning he sounded just like an enthusiastic kid, and so that's why I was kind of like, oh, you do have a budget, because he was just like, oh, I need one for that studio, and by the way, one for that studio also. So I was like that's when I realized that he was kind of well established, so to say. And same thing there, that I believe there was some transport damage on one of them, and we just fixed it really quickly, because it of course, as we always try to do, but I know we went an extra mile for him, especially because he was not trying to get like a special price or anything like that. He was just like, boom, and then he was very forthcoming and not trying to play any games. So we were kind of just like, it was easy for us to be very forthcoming in our end too. So that was a very good experience. He seems to be a great guy, and he was definitely great to work with, so to say. So
well, we have this video of him in his studio.
That's right. I don't think I've seen this.
Talking about how much he loves his Mellotrons.
Before we start the video, this is very funny. Now, after you were saying what you said, and after listening to Issues, I just want to point out that think of how much he uses Mellotron in Issues and how much it's like the quintessential kind of sounds, and just remember that while you watch this video, because I think that explains some of his thinking and what he's about to say.
Here we go.
All right.
It's weird to be on this side of the camera, literally. I'm usually like a behind the scenes type of guy, and I don't know, I decided to make an album many years later in my career, but I hope you guys like it. This is one of my favorites because it's actually crazy because I usually only use vintage gear, but this one's like a remake of an old Mellotron, and for some reason I love it because like all these always crap out, and like I gotta redo them and get them fixed like every fucking second. The thing I hate the most is when any of my music sounds like anyone else. So what I do is I add all these little pedals and stuff to make it sound even weirder. So it's like, I was on the road with Ed Sheeran, and we were finishing the last album, Divide, and I did that album with him, and
yeah, that's kind of it here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. That I hadn't seen that before, actually. That's new to me. So again, funny, the Ed Sheeran connection. I mean, it's all
same album as Shape of You.
Yeah, cool. But yeah, he's that's great to hear that, because that's precisely the way that the reason I designed it, and I designed it the way it is designed. That it's not based on any complicated computer stuff inside. It's tailor-made for its purpose. Right. And we added as little extra bullshit basically to the whole thing to make it as reliable and as to the point as possible, so to say. So it's good that he and I'm glad to hear that he mentions it in connection with vintage gear, which is kind of what I've for many years I've always missed when I was seeing the new gear that was being developed, that it had so little of the stuff that one appreciates about vintage gear, so to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that he was saying all of his other gear is, I mean, in that video even, he kind of does a whole studio tour, and it's like all these old synths and stuff that are really cool. I just found it so funny that he then, while talking about the Mellotron, turned around and he's like, well, I love this one because all of these other ones just crap out all the time. I always have to take them in. I always have to fix them. So it's nice to have the one kind of thing I don't need to worry about that's also going to give me that kind of older vintage sound,
Yeah, and also, like he was mentioning, something that not everybody has, and also because he's adding effects and stuff to it, so to say. Yeah. So but that feels good that somebody that appreciates something more like individual is uses the Mellotron as like the basis of the sound, so to say, and he definitely has produced some very 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 interesting. Done some very interesting pop productions for sure.
Oh yeah. It's also kind of fun after listening to Issues, which is just so Mellotron heavy, to watch him then be like, well, I don't want to do anything like anyone else. Like he probably has a little chip on his shoulder like, okay, I already did my like Mellotron song. So now going forward, we're going to put all of these pedals on it so that people don't think I'm doing the same thing again. And I just thought that was really funny. It's like a funny reaction to the success of his song, you know?
Yeah. It would be interesting to hear. I haven't dug into like in depth of his other production. It would be interesting to know, because he was very very enthusiastic when he contacted me the first time, and was very got all the expansion cards that we had at that time. Wow. And was just all over it, so to say. So I should maybe also shoot him a line if he still has the same email address. I don't think he knows of the Optigon and Orchestron stuff that we put out.
Oh,
so Soundcard 4.
Yeah, he would love that.
Yeah. I'm sure he would, especially there. It's also extremely obvious the discrepancy between how easy it is to work with a Mellotron that has these sounds, and how not easy it is to make an original, analog Optigon or Orchestron work properly. Right. I worked on several of them, and the Optigons are made to be their toys, basically. They were made by Mattel, so they were not supposed to last more than maybe 5-6 years, and we're talking about stuff that was made in the mid 70s. Mm-hmm. And then the Orchestron was supposedly more, that was like the poor man's Mellotron, because it was half the price, right? But the fidelity was a lot less. It was, of course, had infinite loops, so that was kind of interesting. But it was not very professionally made. It was not. It had a lot of hum and noise that's not really necessary. And the motors were bad, and the motor controls were horrible, and it was just it was not as they were claiming it to be. I remember when Dave Keane, in the very beginning, he got in touch with Patrick Moraz, who played in both Yes and Moody Blues. Actually, he asked Dave, because Dave was, of course, had a huge collection of Optigon. That's where we got the Optigon sounds from. He had this huge collection of Optigon discs. These are discs, as I'm not mentioning that because it's so self-evident to me, but it might not be to everybody. So there's like this see-through discs with analog optical. It's basically like optical wave files, and it's read with an optical detector. So the disc, so they go round and round, and when you press a key, you just switch on that particular track on the disc, basically, and it's read with 37 optical sensors. In the case of the Orchestron, the Optigon has some more sensors that you can use for playing back rhythms. So the Optigon discs has more tracks, basically. So he had a 4-manual, believe it or not, Orchestron, Mr. Patrick Moraz. He got it. He paid like, I think, 50 grand. I mean, in the mid 70s. Just wow. Insane. And so he knew that Dave had been digging around with all these people that had been, this is like mid 90s, and he's been digging around with trying to find out more info and find instruments from these people. And so he asked Dave, like, he purchased the instrument, got it. It worked for a couple of days, crapped out. He sent it back to the factory and never saw it again. And of course, the Orchestron companies had just been, out of business for a long time. And he just asked Dave if he had, because he was like, it's my instrument. I paid so much money for it. But unfortunately, I don't think that whole thing got any to any good ending, because we have, as far as I know, nobody has seen that. There's a picture of it in like a sales brochure, but I think nobody has ever seen that 4-manual Orchestron. So it's I guessing what happened to that company. I think they cannibalized that one for repairing others or making other instruments, because those optical sensors were really difficult to make, and they were not doing well in that company, and they were not very good engineers either. So that's a little sidetrack to that whole thing.
Fascinating.
Wow.
We've got
it's so many dead ends and weird stuff that was going on at that time, because it was such a Klondike feeling, because the pro and semi-pro instruments, they were so expensive. An analog mellotron was $4,000. That's like a medium-sized car in price. So there was, and of course you could make, even just being a middleman in that sales process, you can make a lot of money. So it was, and people were used to spending a lot of money on this kind of electronics. It's just in the last 30 years that we got used to. I remember seeing the first flatbed scanner for like $70, and my eyes almost fell out. I was like, how is this even possible? This is like the mid 90s or something. So we've just gotten so used to electronics and this kind of stuff being so cheap, basically, that we cannot understand how willing people were at that time to spend like a truckload of money, basically, which, I mean, my dad in the 50s, he was a very well-paid construction engineer, and he paid like several months of salary for his first, it wasn't even a stereo, it was like a record player, and then a radio unit with an amplifier and a speaker in it, all tube, of course, but it all had been, of course, made by little German ladies hand soldering all the wires and everything, and a nice piece of furniture and everything. Of course it had to be expensive, but then people were even more used to like paying a lot of money for electronics, because it was advanced stuff and it wasn't easy to make, and was only made in America and in Europe. That was it. And in Europe it was mostly made in Western Europe also. So it was just a much more of an exclusive thing, and people were, that's the key point here, that they were so used to paying a lot of stuff for it, a lot of money for the stuff. Basically, like a Mark II cost like a luxury car. Basically, a Mark II is a huge home organ style mellotron, and that's why there was so much money in this whole business, and that's why there are so many weird and wonderful offshoots during the 60s and 70s of all these. I mean, there was so much energy and so much money invested in all these different keyboard and instrument projects, and that's why we have such an amazing legacy of all these partially wonderful analog instruments, so to say. Not only tape-based like mellotron and Chamberlins, but also, of course, all of the synths and all of these, just the Fender Rhodes is a marvel of mechanics and electronics, those instruments. So, a little sideline.
Well, we got a little more than 10 minutes left and 2 more songs to listen to. The next one on our list is Feel It Still by Portugal the Man.
Yeah.
We have a couple photos to show of the live set and set up that they have, but maybe we should just get into this one. Here
First, the beginning.
Can keep my hands on myself. Dust them off, put them back up on the shelf. Kiss my little baby girl is in need. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Got another mouth to feed. Leave it with the babies till the mama call the grave digger. Gone with the falling leaves. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might have had your fill, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm
there's two interesting things here to this. First of all, this is the rock guitar from the Mark II Mellotron on half speed, and it's so funny. Like 15 years ago, when I worked on John Frusciante's Mark II, it was the first Mark II that I installed a motor control board where you can go down to half speed. And my friend and I that were working on it, when we were testing it, we were testing like the half speed and different things. And then at half speed, I was at the rock guitar and played some bass notes, and we were both like, "Whoa, this is a really cool sound!" And it sounded exactly like this. So when I heard this song on the radio, my ears would just like fell off because it was just, I just knew immediately, okay, that's that sound. And of course, the other reason why I knew then, was sure about it, because this was 20, when was this? 17
This came
also?
out 2017.
2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So round about 2014 or something, I got this email that said Portugal the Man as the sender. And I was like, what is this? Is this what a dumbass name? And but he was friendly enough, the guy, but I was just like, and I always get a little bit annoyed when people have like they're like, in this case, for example, Portugal the Man. I mean, they have both the email address is something like that, and then they don't have their name in the sender. So it's always hard to connect it to somebody when you don't have a name. So those two things always annoy me. And I was just like, what expression is this? Portugal the Man. What? It was just so, and it of course stuck in my head, which of course was smart. But he was nice enough. Bought I think it was a Mini actually. So he bought the Mini, but it could have been a big one also. But in any case, he bought one and all was good. And I didn't hear anything, of course, and I didn't think of them until, of course, boom, this track comes out. And then when after a few times I heard it on the radio, I was just like, who is this? And then Portugal the Man. Okay. And of course, I remember, then I knew 100% for sure what had happened. Huh?
I said the name that was ingrained in your brain.
Exactly. And of course, I knew it was a digital Mellotron because I had only done that conversion like on a few Mark IIs, and nobody basically on a 400 orders the rock guitar. That was not like, that's not your choice when you order a tape frame for a Mellotron. That's a 400 where you order the tape frame separately. I don't think, well, there's been one or the other that ordered it, but it's so rare. So I of course, and with the Portugal the Man thing, I was just like, yeah, of course, that's the digital Mellotron. So
I have a friend who she's from China, and when she first heard Portugal the Man, she thought someone was saying Portugal demands. She's like, what does Portugal demand? She was really confused. I thought that was funny. I thought I'd throw it in.
What do they want?
Exactly.
Yeah. And before I forget it, I believe that some of these brass stabs are also in a Mellotron. Those short stabs. So.
Yeah, I was curious about it. There was a few sounds that I thought could potentially be a Mellotron there, and the brass being one of them as well.
They probably are, because I was watching a live performance of this song, and I didn't include it in this today because it doesn't really show the Mellotron very much. There's no like good shots where you can kind of see it, but it's there. Also worth mentioning, they have a black Mellotron at that point, which is different than the one that we've seen pictures of that we were just showing the audience. But they have like a bass player playing that like rock guitar kind of part. So but he's still playing the Mellotron for a different section, but I couldn't really tell what it was because they didn't show him very often, but it was probably the brass.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm certain that there's several things in that recording that have that are the digital mellotron. It's just it also can be processed. I mean, the rock guitar bass line situation has, of course, like this reverb on it and like some sort of exciters that makes it like swell. And so, but yeah, it's definitely one of the more interesting mellotron hits, of course, because it's such a left field sound to use from a mellotron, so to say. But it was just funny because I was when, like I said, it was just such a coincidence that we had just seen that this is a pretty good sound on a half, because on normal speed it sounds like a twangy guitar, down down down, down, like a rock, like in rock and roll kind of guitar. But then at half speed it gets this other dimension that now everybody in the world has heard, basically. So it's kind of funny.
I really like the evolution of this broadcast today, because we kind of like started with all these incredible songwriters and even pop music, and the minimalism of that, Sia being the exception because that track's massive.
Right.
But now we're kind of leading back into rock music, which is such, prog, just, the mellotron is so heavy in these genres. So with 3 minutes to spare, sign of the times, Mr. Harry Styles. Here we go.
Yep.
Just stop your crying, it's a sign of the times. Welcome to the final show. Hope you're wearing your best clothes. You can't bribe the door on your way to the sky. You look pretty good down here, but you ain't really good. We never learned, we've been here before. Why are we always stuck and running from the bullets? The bullets. We never learned, we've been here before. Why are we always stuck and running from your bullets? The bullets. Just stop your crying, it's a sign of the times. We gotta get away from here. We gotta get away from here. Just stop your crying, it'll be alright. They told me that the end is near. We gotta get away from here. Just stop your crying at the time of your life.
Sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great track, great song, and it's got almost 700 million listens on YouTube. It's which is I was leafing through the other Harry Styles tracks, and it's one of the definitely the bigger ones that he has. I guess this Watermelon Sugar thing that he had this year was in this region also. So just real brief that he took it on tour. So there are a few photos of him that when he's using it live in various TV shows. So that was
I
really
remember
nice of them.
seeing it on SNL when he performed it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly. And then there was a British rental or production company that bought 2 instruments, and they might have bought another one just because I guess he was touring for a long time, that album, and also doing a lot of promotion. So they were also very nice about it, but they were kind of when they bought it, they were like very like, yeah, this is something it's going to be pretty big, but we can't tell you anything about it. It was kind of fun. And I was like, oh, interesting. Yeah, well, it's time that somebody hears this instrument. No, I wasn't being sarcastic to them, but it's you get a little bit spoiled working with this instrument, both because of its history and also because it's been used also in later days by so many people. So you when somebody's a little bit trying to pull something like that, but they were very nice. So it was no haggling or any like weird tricks that they try to do. But they of course knew that this was going to be something that's fairly big. This was before the track was released. So that's the little anecdote about the Harry Styles Mellotron.
We did hear it on Treat People with Kindness too, which is the last track on his newest record. So it seems like he's definitely still using Mellotron even in the new stuff.
Yeah. I'm glad that we included this track, because while it might not have as like it was a huge song, but while it didn't have as many hits as maybe like Chandelier or something like that, I think it marked a very important like cultural moment in this last decade, because Harry Styles is one of like the biggest cultural icons, I would say, of like 2010 to 2020, starting with like all the One Direction stuff and then doing a complete 180 and doing this now, and here he is with a new album that came out, what was it, 2019 or 2020, the one with Watermelon Sugar and all that. Obviously he's still relevant, and he's going into the next decade with his Mellotron too.
Yeah, this and that track was definitely the track that sort of established him as a respected artist, so to say. Before that track, you couldn't really say that he was like, the kid from One Direction who's gonna do a solo thing. But after that track, and of course also because it was so massive, and he did so many great live shows with a real band and people, playing instruments and the whole thing, and he's got a great voice, and he really showed everybody like, this is where
you can thank the musicians and the engineer for that one. His team definitely helped him out with creating that sound palette, because I was definitely one of those people that was like, Harry Styles, that One Direction kid, shelf it, I don't want it. But then this record came out, and damn, it was good. So wonderful job, everyone. This has been a great broadcast. I'm really happy to end off the year with something just so relevant. A little inspiration going forth to this next year. Looks like we're not going to have another broadcast until 2021. So stay tuned, subscribe. We'll be around. We're still going to be doing some content. We'll have some new home tapes coming out on our YouTube and Instagram. And today, if you're tuning in today, is the last day that the micro will be on sale on our website, digitalmellotron.com. So snag it. You need it. You want it.
You can get 10% off. That is huge.
It's a little bit more. It's like almost 11%.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Maybe I should change the flyers so it says almost 11% off.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Marcus, for joining us today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Peace
out.